Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
podcast for parents and families everywhere.
Whether you have kids that plan to attend college or you have current college students, you want them in and you want them to graduate.
You want a quality education that will give you a skill set that will make you marketable for the jobs of today and the jobs of tomorrow. I am Mark Stucker, and I'm a college coach from Metro Atlanta.
And I am Anika Madden, and I am a parent, also from Atlanta, currently in North Carolina.
This week in the news, how much will Biden be able to do? An article by Kery Murakami of Inside Higher Ed. And the caption reads, "The battle for control of the Senate appears headed for 2 runoff elections in Georgia, with ramifications for higher education." Mark and Anika will discuss, tell me 18 reasons why a 529 plan is the best college savings vehicle. Our bonus content, which is part 3, how COVID is changing college admissions this year. Our interview is the final part with Dr. Lisa Ruff on how to handle 7 mental health barriers that keep students from achieving their peak performance. And our college spotlight comes to you from Texas. It is the University of Houston.
Dave, it's the big 150.
150, man, that's a great milestone for your college bound kid. That's fantastic, man. 150. Now, How many years does that translate to, Mark?
So, 52 weeks in a year, you do the math, 52 times 3 is 156, and we're almost finishing year 3. So we'll start year 4 in February.
Well, that's
you've been along on the ride since 105. But you also did a 4-part interview back on 55, 56, 57, and 58. I don't read letters very often, or emails, I should say. And when I do, I have to get the permission from the person. But this one caught my attention, Dave. So this came in this week, and it's from a listener in California. And she started by saying, "Hey, Mark, happy birthday." So, she heard the last episode.
Yeah.
And then she says, "Love the episode with the feature on Williams. Well done. You captured my alma mater. You guys really did a great job." And then she said it was Duncan Robinson. As remember, I couldn't remember the guy that went from Williams to Michigan to the Miami Heat and keeps.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. Duncan Robinson. We're sure proud of him, having him on the roster. And then this is what really made me want to read the letter. She said, also, it's pronounced Eef, their nickname. So lucky for Dave, we don't get the FU jokes. She said, it's Eef. Ephraim is named after Ephraim, the founder. So she said, that was a good one.
That's a pretty big miss, man.
So I had to read it. Then she said, I think all of us concur with the thinking around the mascot and the nickname. Really didn't go very deep. Lame, yes, lame indeed. But our approach as students was to be able to use the excuse to laugh at ourselves, not take ourselves too seriously, which was very important to survive that competitive environment that humbled all of us. So then she goes on to say, thank you for your wisdom and thanks and warmest regards to the entire podcast crew. So just a nice letter, kind of lifted my day and thought I'd share it. Thanks to a listener from California who's a Williams alum. So.
Well, it's good to know that we can now go to back to the PG rating when we talk about Williams, because we can say, if you.
Oh, you're crazy. All right. I want to make make an announcement, but also request a volunteer. If there's a volunteer out there, loves the podcast, has a little bit of extra time on their hand, wants to contribute to us as part of that team, then reaching out to you, because we've already had one volunteer step up and wrote in. Shout out to Mina from New Jersey. And what she's been doing is taking all of our topics all the way back to the first episode and compiling them together so that you'd be able to go to the website. And if you want to hear everything we've said on college visits, you could just click college visits. You want to hear everything on essays. And so, but it's a pretty Herculean task when you've got 150 episodes and multiple segments. So she's graciously agreed to do it for 100 of them. And so we're looking for a volunteer. I just don't have the time to do that. My commitment is moving forward. Once we get caught up live, I'll categorize all of them and send them over to the webmaster, and he can do his thing. But I can't go back. So if we have someone out there that wants to volunteer their time as a gift to everybody in the college community, just shoot an email to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com and say, I'd love to volunteer to help you compile a categorized list of all the episodes.
Awesome.
Okay, Dave, it is time for the admissions tip. And this is a basic one, but it's actually a really important one. So I want to preface it by saying this. I have a question on, I have a questionnaire that, Dave knows this because I worked with you, but I have a questionnaire that everybody that works with me completes. And it's long. It's like 120 questions for students and 38 for parents. Yes. So one of the questions that, and it's the way I get to know the student besides studying their records and the family, so I can know what they want. So one of the questions I have on my questionnaire says this. It says, besides you and your parents, is there anybody else who will be involved in your admissions decision? So, well, I appreciate the honesty, but every so often a student responds with the answer, my friends.
Oh.
And my admissions tip is, please don't trust your 17 and 18-year-old friends. I know you value them and you respect them and you care about them and you may love them even. And you want them to respect you. But they just don't know that much about all the colleges out there. And when you get out of the echo chamber that you're in at your school, where you think their opinion is so important, you'll find it will mean nothing when you move into a brand new milieu. So my advice is to ignore what your friends think about the colleges on your list, because they're not going and they don't know very much about the school. I can't tell you how many times, Dave, I've recommended a school and the student seems excited about it, and then they've lost interest. And I've said, what's happened? I said, well, my friend told me that's not a good school. Yeah. So admissions tip, ignore your friends.
That's right. This ain't no TV show. Change that channel.
There you go. There you go. Change that channel. And I guess that could apply to social media and a lot of things, but we'll just leave it there.
Yes, please.
All right, Dave, because you've gotten two in a row on admissions vernacular.
I'm on a hot streak.
And because I'm sadistic and in a perverse way, I have more fun when you get them wrong than when you get them right. I'm stepping up to a grad level, not an elementary school level here with this one.
Call me Ken Jennings. I'm ready.
Okay. Ken Jennings, for those of you who don't know, is like the Jeopardy guru whiz. Here it is.
That's right.
CAO.
Okay. College Accounting Organization.
Well, you got the first and the last one right, but 2 out of 3 doesn't count.
Okay, wait.
Now he's trying to guess.
College alumni.
No, you're done. College Access
that
Organization.
That was my next guess.
Yeah, right. College Access Organization, very similar to like CBOs a lot of times. These are organizations that usually, almost always actually fight for a more just and equitable society by trying to help people that oftentimes don't have resources, gain resources by either advocating for the colleges to change policies when it comes to things like financial aid and other things that tend to favor those with resources, or just providing supports, maybe counseling, anything from scholarships, anything to do with helping under-resourced kids with the college process. College Access Organization, CAO. Let's turn to college hot topics in the news. Take it away, Dave.
All right. Well, this is a Kery Murakami article in Inside Higher Ed. How much will Biden be able to do? Now, for all the folks who have been hiding under a rock, who have been vacationing in the Maldives, in fact, Mark, I heard that there were 4 scientists who were working on an island for a year, didn't know anything about it, were so happy to get back to civilization, and then figured out it's COVID, and they were surprised that So for all those folks that have been on that island, there's a runoff election in Georgia right now, And these runoff elections will determine who controls the Senate. And the point of this article is that control will essentially determine how much Biden will be able to enact of the potential plans he announced during his run. So,
well, particularly education plans. So,
education plans.
Yeah, the reason why we're talking about this on the College Admission podcast is to look at what is it that Biden even wants to do to change higher ed.
Correct.
So I think our listeners would want to know, what is his vision? What changes would he like to see? And then whether or not they can be enacted or not. So, yeah, just wanted to put that in there.
Right. So let me go ahead and talk about what Biden's education plans were, and then we can discuss the chances of them passing. So in summary, Biden's plan was, number one, he wanted to spend $1 trillion to eliminate tuition at community colleges and historically Black colleges and universities, as well as public institutions for those making $125,000 or less. He also wanted to cancel $10,000 from all borrowers' students' debt that was accrued during the pandemic. And for those making $125,000 or less, he wanted to forgive the debt accumulated to pay tuition, though not the debt on loans for living expenses. So, Mark, did I get that as a good summary? And so the question is, if the Democrats do not have a clear majority, and even if they do, and they're unable to pass a filibuster, what are the chances that you think that he could enact these proposals?
Yeah, good job summarizing them. And I still think these things are important because whether he gets them or not, you kind of know this is where his heart is. And there may be circuitous ways to try to come back and get another bite at the apple, whether that's, midterm elections or if he is incredibly effective at working across the aisle and building coalitions. But I just thought it's important for us to kind of know where his vision is for education. What some things he wants to change. Now, but in order to have enough votes to pass with Harris's help, any proposal would need the support of all the Democrats, including moderates like West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, who has been willing to break party ranks. And it says this would mean any bill would need to have the support of several Republican senators to end a filibuster. And then here's the killer line in the quote. Most of the big stuff is out of play, Hess said. That's right. Free college is out of play. Student loan cancellation is out of play. So the likelihood is stagnation and status quo when it comes to these big plans. I just can't see. I can't see these things happening because these are really, really big ticket items. And the Republicans are really signaling that there's going to be a focus on austerity and on balancing the budget. And let's face it, at the start, there's going to be a lot of talk about stimulus.
Right.
That's going to, and COVID is still going to dominate conversation and news and that's completely understandable when you've got more than 270,000 people that have died in some projections. When I look at these individual things, I kind of find it hard to see how any of these things pass, Dave. $1 trillion to eliminate student loan debt at the community college or historically Black colleges. I doubt it. Free public college for those making under $125,000. Just the amount of money that would have to be allocated, it would take a pretty big consensus. The 10th, you're going to say something. Go ahead and say something. I'll have a few more thoughts.
Well, it's like the old adage, slim and none, and Slim just walked out the door. So you
agree. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I do. And, to be fair to the article, they pretty much quickly acknowledged that and pivoted in the latter part of the article to thinking, okay, well, if he can't get that, what could he do? And Correct. They talked about two things that are still probably a stretch, but, number one, increasing the size of the Pell Grants, and number two, targeted debt relief. And they went somewhat into the weeds of what senators may be amenable to these type of things.
Well, I actually want to talk about that, Dave, a little bit, because that's actually really important. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So go ahead. You lead us off from that.
Yeah. So one thing that a lot of people may not know is Lamar Alexander has been in charge of education. He's been the chair of the committee, because whoever's in charge gets to decide who the chair of the committee is. And so that's been Lamar Alexander. It's the Senate Education Committee. And Lamar Alexander was the former president of the University of Tennessee. So he has been very progressive on a lot of these issues compared to other Republicans. And Democrats have oftentimes found they've had an ally with him. And so Patty Murray has been the Democrat counterpart that's worked with him. And they've been able to work really, really, really closely on a lot of things. And actually what Lamar Alexander, who's retiring, by the way, he's been saying for the last 2 years, the one big thing that he wants to do before he retires is have some significant changes in education reform, higher education reform. So some of the things that Lamar Alexander feels very, very strongly about is simplification of the FAFSA. So if it's too complicated, it's leading to too many errors and people are losing out on money because of mistakes. So he's felt very, very, very strongly with that. Murray supported that. The Dems have supported that. They've worked together. There's also been a growing realization that the Pell Grant has not anywhere, shape, or form come close to keeping up with the cost of college. When you go back and look at the Pell Grant, which was founded by Senator Pell from Rhode Island back in 1972, at that time, it covered most of the cost of attendance, for a moderate to under-resourced kid. And that is just not true at all. Now, I mean, the Pell tops out just a few dollars above $6,300. Wow. And that's for the most under-resourced. That's typically for like a family of four with an income under $25,000. Okay, to get that full $6,300. And families that, and you have to be careful using income to talk about this, because the FAFSA formula looks at a lot of things such as number of kids in college, size of the family, age of the oldest parent, whether you're a dependent or an independent. So have to be assets, what your assets are. But if you have what are called typical assets and family of four with an income at the national average, which was $63,000 and some change last I checked, then you're not Pell eligible. So they're trying to get an increase in Pell. And a lot of people thought that there was going to be a breakthrough. And then COVID hit, because he said, listen, before I leave, I want to accomplish this. And then the other thing that they've really been working on, has been worked on now for years, is the reauthorization of the Higher Educational Act, which governs how policies and procedures and how colleges function. And that has not been renewed or revised in years because of the stalemate. So the thinking is, if the Democrats don't win both of the Senate races in Georgia, then there's almost nobody that is on the Republican side that is expected to be anywhere near as sort of pro-college and sympathetic to working with the Democrats on these issues. In fact, here's a quote from the article.
Yep.
I'm going to read this because this is actually important. It says, much will depend on who will chair the Senate's Education Committee. The problem is the current chairman, Lamar Alexander, former president of the University of Tennessee, will be retiring January 3rd. He's been the linchpin for Republicans on education for a decade, has said during the online discussion. But others, like North Carolina's Richard Burr, Kentucky's Rand Paul, Maine's Susan Collins, they could be in line to be chair of Health, Education, Labor, or Pensions Committee, which will likely be preoccupied during a pandemic with the healthcare portion of its charge. And then it says this: they aren't known to be as interested in higher education as Alexander has been. So not to be a pessimist, Dave, but if the Dems win both of those, then you've got 50, but you still are going to need a filibuster. You're still going to need 60 votes to do something substantial.
It's going to be difficult.
So the one positive thing in the article, and to be honest, they're more optimistic than I am, but I'll be very pleased to be wrong. Is there's a feeling that there's a lot more interest on increasing the amount of the Pell Grant. And that could be something where both sides could agree on and could get done. Now, I don't disagree that the Pell Grant may go up. It's been going up about $100 a year, but what's $100? I mean, come on.
Right.
There's a strong movement really being championed by an outstanding organization called NCAN, which stands for National College Access Network, which is a CAO, by the way, College Access Organization. NCAN, one of the best ones. Attended a great conference with them last year. But there's a strong emphasis by NCAN and others like Jack and Cook and others it's called Double the Pell. And they're putting lots and lots of pressure on congressmen to double the Pell Grant. I just don't see it because, people might like it in theory, but in reality, that means your budget determines your priorities. And I just don't see anything like doubling the Pell even getting close to getting passed. Now, is it possible that with Biden in there, that maybe it could go, the numbers could go from 6,300 to 7,000? I could see something like that happening.
Yeah. Well, incremental change at the edges, if they could possibly get some of the moderate senators and certainly targeting the Pell Grants or targeting some smaller debt relief is possible. But let's just say that I think Biden's going to have so much on his plate that it's probably not going to be the first order priorities when he first gets into office. We'll just have to see how things shake out.
Another thing that has a possibility of getting through to me would be free community college, because typically community college is not very expensive.
Yes.
And, remember Bernie Sanders was really big on free college in 2016. Well, 20 states ended up passing some version of free college. Normally it was free community college. Yeah. There were a few more, extensive plans like New York, ended up doing something for 4-year schools as well with some caveats in there. You have to stay in the state afterward for a while and give back and, some conditions, but that's possible that you could see that. So anyway, we just wanted to throw it out there, let people know what Biden's vision is. And it'll be interesting. Maybe we'll have to come back 4 years after the election and see what, if anything, got accomplished, Dave.
Now it's time for our step-by-step walkthrough of the college admissions process.
Anika, it's the big 150. 150. Any thoughts?
Happy 150. That's my thought.
Well, here's my thought. I can tell we've been doing this a while because I can't remember how we got started.
I know. I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, how do we even start this thing?
I can't remember. Was it my idea? Was it your idea? I don't even remember that.
I was doing the same thing. That's hilarious.
I think that probably says more about us than it says about the podcast, and not in a good way.
I know.
All right, let's dive in. So chapter 150. It is entitled, Tell Me 18 Reasons Why a 529 is the Best College Savings Vehicle. So we're going to dive in and cover about 16 of these 18 today, Anika. We discussed in our pre-meeting. But before we do, you want to make any comments at all about what a 529 is or anything like that? Or
Well, let's go ahead and define it. So a 529, it's a long-term college savings plan. Mm-hmm. It's either operated by the state or an educational institution that has tax advantages, of course, and you have a designated beneficiary, such as a child or a grandchild.
Well, a couple of things I want to comment on is that it's been around since 1996, and it gets its name from the Section 529 of the IRS code. So that's kind of where it comes from. And one of the reasons why it's so important is because ever since, if we go back to 2005, the cost of college has outpaced inflation by 3.4%. So if you're not putting some money away, you better be Anika's kids and be getting full scholarships, or being prayed up like you are.
All of that.
So, because this thing's gotten expensive. So those are just kind of the basics now. Now, there are some other, it's not the only college saving plan out there. There's what's known as a UGMA and a UTMA and the Coverdale ESA. But we're going to say 16 reasons why I feel definitively, affirmatively, indisputably, indubitably, any of those words, it's the best.
All right. So we're going to, like you said, we're going to start from the top. We're going to do 16 to 18 of these guys. So the first one states that if you invest, it's called a tax deferred growth, right? Mm-hmm. So if, let's just say you invest $25,000 into this 529, and if it grows to $75,000, you don't have to pay taxes on that $50,000 growth. Whoa.
Exactly. $50,000, no taxes. That works for me.
Okay. All right. And then the second one is that there's no income limits as to who can invest. So you can be a billionaire, I guess, and still have a 529. Is that basically what that's saying?
Yeah, and that might seem like, well, what's the biggie? Well, what's significant about that is that's not the way other vehicles that people use operate. Roth IRAs have caps. Coverdales have caps. Most plans have caps. That's really, really nice.
Okay. All right. The third one is that you can put away as much as $28,000 per year per child in a 529.
Yeah, that's really significant because you've got, plans out there with $2,000 caps on them.
Oh, wow.
So $28,000, per year, you can put away a nice chunk of money.
Okay. And this next one, I want to make sure I noted this right because it says lifetime limits are pretty high and it can go into the $500,000 mark. Let me make sure I understand what I'm talking about when I say lifetime limits.
Oh, were you going to ask me? Or do you want me to
that was the question. Sorry.
I thought you said, I was waiting for your spiel. The spiel never came.
The spiel is Mark.
Okay. So what happens is, every state has their own plan. Almost every state has their own plan. I think actually all 50 states have their own plan. And they have different policies and procedures, in regard to their plan. And one of them is they establish the maximum that you can contribute. And these numbers are really, really high. So there's a lifetime maximum.
Okay.
But the lifetime maximum is like $456,000, $480,000 per kid. Okay. So the point is it's really, really high maximum amounts. I mean, that's just a lot of money.
Okay. All right. Next up, obviously a good one. This one says that most states offer tax deductions for the 529. Self-explanatory, right?
Yeah, but think about it. So your money's growing tax-free. That's really sweet. Mm-hmm. But then you also get a tax write-off for what you contributed. So, for example, in Georgia, it's $2,000 tax write-off, but the $2,000 is $2,000. That's still money saved. So you get the tax-free growth and the tax deduction. Now, that's not every single state, but 2/3 of the states offer this tax deduction. And in some cases, it's pretty substantial. So I gave the Georgia example of $2,000, but let's look at Pennsylvania. First of all, the Pennsylvania state tax rate is a little bit over 3%, and they allow a $14,000 max.
Mm.
So that's a nice little tax deduction, $14,000 plus tax-free growth.
Okay. All right. Now, this next one was pretty interesting. It says that the funds of a 529, they can be used on different college expenses, such as computers, printers, internet service. And that was interesting because I just assumed that it's all about tuition, like college tuition. And how do I pay my tuition? So that's good to know.
Exactly. So the broad use of it, even things like educational software. So it's not just tuition or fees or even room and board. So the variety of ways in which you can use it makes it another reason why I love 529s. If I could sing, I'd sing a song, but we all know I can't sing.
All right. So going back, kind of sort of back to the tax deduction, some states go beyond that and they offer a tax credit for 529.
Yes. So the difference between a tax deduction and a tax credit, Anika?
Kind of, sort of I do, but go ahead and give it to me, Mark. No, you know
I know when you're bluffing, I'll call you out. So it's really nice. So a tax deduction, let's say, I'll just make the number up. Let's say, let's use the Pennsylvania number, because that's a big one, $14,000. So that's like, if I'm just make up a number. If your taxable income was $100,000, then deduction would mean 100 minus 14. You now pay taxes on 86,000 instead of 100, right? So you're taxed on less money. A tax credit means you get $14,000 back. So instead of you just paying taxes on a lower amount, you get refunded that amount. It's similar to the American Opportunity Tax Credit. You actually get money back. See the difference?
Makes all the good sense.
And a couple of states that do that would be Utah, Indiana, and Vermont.
Okay. And this is one of my favorite ones, that friends and family can contribute to your 529.
Yeah, it's just really, really flexible. And that's one of the things. So GoFundMe. We talked about that the other day. High school graduation. No, you know what I really should say?
What's that?
Because one of the problems, not problems, but I'll say problems. I'll say challenges. One of the biggest challenges with 529s is the time people learn about them. They're kids like 17 or 16 or 18. And there's not that much time for your money to compound and go from 25 to 75 or go from 75 to 200. So I said GoFundMe for high school graduation. How about for gifted birth, christening or something?
Baby shower, kindergarten.
Baby shower. That's what I was trying to remember. Neil.
Okay. And then, and here's another good one. So if you don't use all the money in your 529, you can actually redirect the funds without huge tax burdens. I'm sure they're going to charge you a little something, but it's not.
No, it's really flexible and easy to do that, especially if it's going from one sibling to another sibling or even to, I'm going to give one away here in a second. Even to yourself, to the parent. Go ahead.
Yep. Don't give it away yet. So the next one is that you can select from a variety of funds. So you can do mutual funds, ETFs, fund of fund. What is a fund of fund? What is that?
It's like a bunch of funds all combined in one. But you know what? This is going to vary depending on the plan that you pick. And each state has different plans, but you don't have to take your own state's plan.
Yeah, speaking of the next point.
Oh, is that it?
So you can shop around for 529 plans outside of the state plan. So I just assumed this was all about the state, but not so.
No. Now, it's pretty common for you to get that deduction we talked about that 2/3 of the states do. It's pretty common for you to get that deduction only if you use your state plan. But there are some plans that are so generous that it really is in your best interest to use an out-of-state plan rather than your in-state plan.
Okay. All right. And then this next one is that you can actually change your beneficiary from one person to another. Not sure why you would want to do that, but.
So here's an example. You've got money at 529. Okay. For Janaea. And you've got $50,000 in that 529, and then she gets a full scholarship and she doesn't need it.
Oh, look at that. Yeah.
So you don't need the money anymore, but you don't want to waste it. So guess what? Little Johnny, it is your day.
John is the winner. Woohoo.
See, that's a very practical use for it right there. Or here's another case. They tell you, I've decided I'm not going to college. Instead of you losing the money. So this is actually a really, really big benefit.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. And this one you kind of sort of gave it away about, adults can take out the adult can take out their 529 plan for themselves because adults do go to school or they go back to school. So
correct. And that means adult can get the tax-free growth, the tax deduction, or possibly even the tax credit. Yep. Good stuff.
Okay. And this is another good one that you can actually use the 529 for an undergraduate or graduate degree. Did not know that either. That's awesome.
Well, it's not just that. It's technical schools, it's trade schools, cooking schools, golf schools.
Oh, wow.
And it's gotten even better. As of last year, you can also use it for up to $10,000 for private K through 12.
Oh, goodness.
So if you had a 529, you could have used it for Woodbury Forest for Jalen or for, the George School for Janaea.
Okay. All right. This next one is that the donor always stays in control. So this kid can't reach 18 and take over the world and say what they want to do with the fund. The donor of the fund is the one that dictates where it goes.
Yeah. And remember I mentioned a couple other programs, accounts out there, UGMAs and UTMAs. And that's different for them. And UGMAs and UTMAs, which are custodial accounts, the child really takes control of the assets once they reach legal age. So that's another nice perk. If you want to make sure it doesn't get squandered, you're in control.
Right. Okay. And the final one, there are no age limits on when you can contribute or when someone can be designated as a beneficiary. So Can John be designated in the womb, or does he have to come out the womb first?
That's a good question. I think he's need to at least pop out.
I know his name already. I mean,
there you go. So, I say a couple other things here, and we'll call it a day on this. IRS Publication 970 is a really good place to go if you want to read up more on this. And then a website that we've had before as a recommended resource, savingsforcollege.com. And Mark Kantrowitz is the editor we've had on as a guest on the podcast before. That's a go-to website to want to learn more about 529s, besides the 18 points that we mentioned here in the book. Mm-hmm. Now, there is one other thing, but I don't want to talk about this too much now, Anita, because I feel we'll open up a whole Pandora's box, and maybe we'll have to come back to it another time. But believe it or not, there's a second type of 529 that not that many people know about. And it's known as prepaid tuition programs.
Okay, that's thank you. Okay, I get it.
You're wondering why that was at the back of the chapter.
I did.
Yeah, so there's another type, and those can be really good, so some states have them, and, you can lock in the current tuition price and not have to worry about price increases if you're willing to put the money up front. So I just kind of wanted to say that because a lot of people don't know about that. But there's a 529 overview. I don't think we've ever done 16 point set ever before, and we actually did it pretty quickly.
Impressive.
That says a lot when I'm in the game. All right, Anika. Anika and I are so grateful for everyone who has financially supported our podcast. It allows us to pay our staff and cover our other auxiliary expenses involved in having a weekly professional podcast.
At the start of every month, we're going to start sending a special gift to anyone who financially supports your college-bound kid.
I will be sending our donors this bonus content once a month directly to your email. The bonus content will be between 10 to 15 minutes in length. Usually it will be a college-related topic that I'm passionate about. Occasionally, it'll be another bonus hot topic in the news segment. Sometimes it'll be an answer to a question that one of our listeners submits to us via email.
And you'll receive these monthly audio blogs for a gift of any amount. We know that $5,000 to one person is $5 to someone else, and we don't want your budget to be a hindrance to you receiving this additional bonus content. So if you want to support our show, just go to yourcollegeboundkid.com and click the donate button. And if you've already financially supported our podcast, you will automatically start receiving this bonus content via your email.
This bonus content is our way of letting our financial supporters know in a tangible way how much we appreciate you. And if you have any questions at all about our monthly bonus content, just send your questions our way. That's to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. Once again, questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com.
All right, we are moving into the third and final part of how COVID-19, this awesome, not so awesome COVID-19 has impacted admissions. We're going to talk about the final part.
And the first week, I just spent all my time talking about why I expect it to be easier for for class of 2021 to get in. And you can go back and listen to that. Last week, we talked about 10 changes I expect because of COVID-19 and the college admission process. And today I was all set to get my last 10, Anika. And I said, you know what? Rather than just pull all these out of my head, I should read every single article I can get my hands on because I might be missing one. And sure enough, I was like, oh, yeah, that's a good one. So I got 11 today. Okay. One of them comes from Jeffrey Silingo. He made a good point. I didn't think about it in an article he wrote on this. So what I'm going to do is throw out the first 5 and see if which one of those you want to comment on.
Okay.
And then we'll do the same thing for the last 6. Does that work?
Yep.
Okay. Expect more reevaluation of aid offers. Okay. Now, don't use the word negotiating because that is like nails on a chalkboard to people who work in financial aid. They hate that word. But it's the same thing. It's just a different word. Like reevaluating of your aid offer. They need you more than ever, and they need your money, and that means you have leverage. So expect more of a willingness for a school to not necessarily accept the first offer they gave you in this new climate. Number 12, more focus on local recruiting. So all the evidence indicates that students are staying closer to home. And colleges are aware of that. And so they're doing some creative things. Like last year, Franklin and Marshall, after their deadline, reopened up their deadline with a special concentration for people in the Lancaster, Pennsylvania area, which is where they're located. So, schools realize, look, if people are staying closer, I can't, neglect my backyard, which hopefully they did before, but now they're going to an even greater extent to recruit locally.
Right.
13, more focus on the rigor of your curriculum in the evaluation process. So why would that be true, Anika? What do you think?
I guess because things are so crazy. Well, it seemed like it would be the opposite almost. Not the opposite, but I don't know. I know there's a lot of leniency now in terms of how these kids are navigating their courses because everything's so virtual and it has, the learning environment itself is so different. So I don't know. It seems like it shouldn't be that way.
So the biggest reason is because so many schools have gone test optional or test blind. And so without having test scores, and by the way, you know what I was doing an hour and a half ago, Anika?
What's that?
I was consoling a student that I'm working with on the East Coast who worked so hard to prep for his SAT, showed up on Saturday morning. So Anika and I are recording this on a Monday today. And there was a sign on the door saying, sorry, we had to cancel. We didn't have enough workers. So this cancellation stuff is still happening. It started in March and it's still happening in December. So as a result of that, we know we've already talked about schools going test optional, test blind. We covered that already. But if you don't have test scores, you got to overemphasize other things. And nothing will be emphasized more than the rigor of your curriculum and the grades, of course, in that rigor. But even more of an emphasis on rigor without test scores. 14, growth of hybrid and online classes. So for all the complaints about students taking Zoom classes, and I've even heard this from some of Joy's friends, I actually like some of them. And there's some practicality to them and some convenience to them. And teachers have gotten better and they're getting better at it. And look, they're not for everybody, but look for more courses like that to be offered. They do offer some aspects of flexibility, and there's actually a sector of the population that likes them. I'll say this really quickly. I was talking to a director of admission at a well-known school. In fact, he's coming on the podcast in 2021. We've been just nailing the details down. And he was saying to me, you know what a weird thing that's happened, Mark? Our teachers are saying that for introverts, Zoom classes work better at bringing them out because they're somewhat reluctant to raise their hand in class. But when they can just type something in the chat box, they're saying the most profound things. So it really kind of hit me. We're always saying, this Zoom, it's inferior. And in reality is for some people, it actually works. And so look for more hybrid classes, more online classes. I can tell Nika's not sold at all on that. She's just
not even a little bit.
I know. I can tell. I know you now. I know you for 11 years and been podcasting with you for 3. Just total silence over there. No grunts. No, no, yeah, no, hey, man.
Because you know what? Because I got Janaea and John's little face in my head when you're saying all that, and they are the complete opposite of that. Like, can't stand it.
Yeah, well, I've talked to enough students to. In fact, I talked to one student I work with in Virginia, and she says, I am really liking it. I'm doing better than ever before. Another one told me, this was a student who had a really long commute, and they said, it is so nice not having to get up at 5 a.m. for my commute. So it really is case by case. But anyway, let's move off that before the steam cart starts coming out of your nose and ears. All right. Growth of certificate programs. This is something that's already been happening, but look for it to go on steroids, because people are questioning college right now. And so if college can be shorter and quicker and you can get credentials, that can be very, very appealing as they look at the ROI on it. And so hint, 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 Dave and I have a in the news coming up really soon talking about how these programs are growing. Next point 16. More community college recruitment. So look at it from this standpoint. Colleges are struggling right now to get enough applicants. And when you're struggling to get enough applicants, one of the things you start looking and say, well, what areas have we been overlooking that we haven't really tapped into? And it's general consensus across the board that four-year colleges, for the most part, and there's definitely some exceptions, have done a pretty bad job at tapping into community colleges' feeders. And then the last point before I'm going to ask you to comment on one of these is recruiting more non-traditional students. So there's actually more non-traditional students out there than the traditional 18, go off to college, live in the dorm. Mm-hmm. When you look at the percentage of non-traditional students, it's actually more. But how much recruitment is happening to the 27-year-old with 2 kids who's going to go part-time? There hasn't been, they're not wooed and recruited the same way the 17 and 18-year-old is in high school. Yeah. So that's another untapped resource, and I expect recruitment to pick up in those areas. So want to comment on any of those, Anika?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting about the non-traditional students recruitment actually around that. That is interesting. Yeah. But going back to the hybrid classes and the growth of certificate programs.
Oh boy, I knew you'd go back there. Oh,
yeah, you know it. Because, not even just because I know John and Janae absolutely despise. Well, I wouldn't say they despise it. They just look forward to going back to the in-person sessions. Mm-hmm. I do know and I know this isn't college, but I am very familiar with the lack of resources around these students that are able to access the online, whatever. And who can't navigate it, and who have parents that can't navigate it. And so here you have this group of kids who are struggling in this online platform, who are eventually going to go off into college that may still be in an online platform. So it's just like, I'm very sensitive to like this huge challenges that I know that, just in my area alone that families are experiencing with, and some college too. But obviously I'm, more in the John middle school realm where online is
here's
horrible.
The other side to that coin. There's lots and lots of people who can't live on the dorm and have that experience because living on the dorm is generally $9,000 to $19,000. Mm-hmm. So you could argue the other way that it equals the playing field. We don't have the haves that can have that live on campus experience, and those who don't have money that can't do that. So that's just the other side of the coin there. Just want to toss it out there.
Okay.
I'm buying it still. I can tell.
Okay. Next, however many we got left.
Yeah. Before you start steaming, you hang up on me. I'll be like, Anika, hello?
No.
She hung up on the phone. All right. Here we go. So if you notice a lot of the things I'm talking about, they have to do, if you put them in buckets, they have to do with the fact that there's a war out there for talent and there's a dearth of students compared to the needs of schools. People forget because there's so much talk about selective schools and getting into selective schools. But do you realize that, Nika, only 8% of schools deny more kids than they admit? Mm-hmm. Only 8%. Does that surprise you?
Nope, because you told me before.
Okay. Okay, at least you listened that time. And then here's another stat. Only 2% of schools admit less than 1 in 5. So the point is most schools need more students. We've done sessions on this before, going into July and even August and not fully enrolled, or schools being down 5, 10, 15%. So many of these have to do with how can schools get more students, or how can schools get more money? Because they need students and they need money. So if you listen to a lot of my points, they fall in a lot of those categories. And when I was brainstorming, that's really what led me to come up with these. So here's another one. Look for a closer relationship between colleges and independent educational consultants. Now, this has already been happening. There are a lot of schools in the past that used to say, I don't work with educational consultants. We don't need to do that, almost in some cases, not always, almost like a status thing. We already have enough people banging down our doors. But if you've looked at the last 5 years, a lot of schools that never worked with independent educational consultants are working directly with it, having them out for tours and luncheons and doing questions and answers and even doing counselor calls. And so once again, just like community colleges is a feeder for them, just like non-traditional students is a feeder for them, they're realizing independent educational consultants, hey, this can be a great feeder source for me to, why should all my competitors get the great kids? And then keep in mind, a lot of times independent educational consultants work with people that can pay a little bit of money. So schools need revenue. So yeah, that's been happening for a while, but I expect it to be a significant uptick. Okay, 19. more tuition freezes and tuition deductions. Now, Dave and I just did it in the news on that. Mm-hmm. Schools are finding that old model of high tuition discount rate, we talked about that, $50,000, but then everybody really gets $15,000 scholarship, even if they don't know they give it to everybody. They make you think like you're so special because they really are hoping to get $35,000 out of you. Mm-hmm. That model's not working as much anymore because people just look at the $50,000 and say, I don't have it. So they don't even apply. Right. So one way to get them on campus is to lower the tuition or to really advertise. We're cutting our tuition. These are all things that have been happening. These are all things we've done in the news is on. I'm just saying, look for more and more and more of this. Mm-hmm. Number 20. We've talked before about the fact that when you are accepted and admitted, there's language in the agreement that says we expect your performance to continue as it has, or reserve the right to change our mind. Look for less and less of that. Look for even more grace when it comes to schools rescinding decisions, especially over academics. Just because they need students, but also because in this age of COVID, just, all the different ways it impacts people, just expect more grace.
Okay.
And then the last one that I have is more deference to traditional feeder schools where you have a track record of admitting students. This is the one that I borrowed from Salingo. The others I just racked my brain and came up with. But he had a really good article in this, the Washington Post. So here's how this works. Once again, if you don't have grades, then if you have pass fail only or credit no credit only for possibly one or maybe even more 2 semesters, you've lost one of the biggest things you use to determine who you admit. And then you throw in your test optional and that's new to you. Whoa. Remember, admissions is about risk reward. So one way to diminish the risk is to look at your traditional feeders and to admit kids for whom you have a track record from a school of, knowing, look, these kids come in, they graduate at this rate. They're likely to pick us if we admit them. All schools have all that data. They know their yield rate for schools. They know graduation rates. They have that. So more reliance on traditional feeders as a way to diminish some of the uncertainty. Any comment on any of those, Anika?
I just wonder, I wonder why that would have been less before, like going to feeder schools. Like how?
Well, no, it always happened, right? So there was always some difference there. That's why they keep coming back to the schools.
Right.
That's why they do counselor calls with those schools. Mm-hmm. They travel there, okay? That always happened. But what I'm saying is there's always another part of them that said, you know what? We're giving some schools some special privileges, and we do need to be fair and equitable and not hurt other schools that don't have this kind of relationship with us. And they also want to be diverse too. They don't want to, because a lot of the schools I'm talking about, let's just cut to the chase. These tend to be boarding schools, private day schools, and affluent suburban public schools, right? Okay. So these are privileged schools.
Yeah.
And so there's always the other side of them that says, you know what I mean? What about access? What about equity? What about, exploring new feeders? Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is I see less experimentation. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the school's not going to take somebody from a school they've never heard of before, because they will, because there's enough information in the file, even with some of the limitations we've talked about this year, for them to know, oh, this kid can do our program. Mm-hmm. But I do believe, I think so. I agree with Salingo. As soon as I read what he said, it immediately resonated with me as true. Putting my admissions hat on, it's less risky, and there's already a lot of risk factors in there. If I don't see grades and I don't see scores, well, think about it this way, Nika. You're recruiting, and your job is to recruit people for your job, and you're going to have this huge recruitment fair, and then all of a sudden, there's like this massive hurricane or tornado, and it cancels the whole thing, and you got to hire a bunch of people. Well, you kind of go back to your good, steady, proven and true sources that have always given you employees, and it's just less risky than taking a shot on someone that you don't know anything about the program they've come from.
Okay.
What do you think?
Well, I actually have a question about when you were saying about them giving a little bit more grace, if the grades go down after they've been accepted. So I just wonder how that would play out. Would it be that the grade, I'm doing great, but my grades go down? Is it that they say, hey, we're going to still accept you, but you got to tell us why? Or will it be that they're just going to say, oh, you know what, that kid probably had it? I mean, is it going to be some some digging and diving in that, or do you? I don't want the kids to just think that they can just go off and not worry about the grades afterward. Yeah.
So it's a really good question, and the answer is I mean, you always hear this in admissions. It depends, right? It varies. So it's because different schools have different policies on this.
Right.
Different schools have different policies on how much of a dip it needs to occur. Generally, schools don't like to rescind offers over grades. It doesn't happen that often. You really need. I've had it happen to me twice in the last 4 years, but it never happened to me 2 years before that at all. And in both cases, the grades were like in one case, the grades went from all A's and A minuses to C's and D's. And this is a school with a single digit acceptance rate. So really, really crazy competitive school. In another case, it was one of the most selective schools in the country. It'd be one of the first 2 or 3 names that would roll off your lips if you were to say, what's the hardest school to get into? And straight A's went to 2 C's in the spring. So there already usually needs to be more than a full letter grade for schools to rescind or to revoke or to cancel, as Lisa Prescott uses that word. I got that from her when I interviewed her. We canceled 20 kids last year, she told me. I'm like, I like that word, canceled. So it already had to be but they did it because, the UCs let you self-report. Okay. And so some people self-reported grades. And then when the real transcript came, it was like, that's not the grade you put down. So that was a little different.
Right.
It wasn't just, this thing we're talking about here. But what I'm saying is, a student could say, look, COVID impacted me, blah, blah, blah. And they'd be more likely to say, you know what, let's just give them the benefit of the doubt rather than that sounds like an excuse.
Okay.
Just like teachers right now,
Right.
I mean, teachers tend to be giving students a lot more grace on things like that over COVID. And, there's more flexibility right now, even not necessarily on deadlines. But anyway. If I was to throw one more in really quickly, schools are changing their deadlines, moving them back. I'm seeing so much of that. I got a text. I'm going to shout this person out because she's a regular listener to our podcast. Shout out to Tazeen in California. She sent me a text. Mark, did you know that Claremont McKenna and the UCs and Cal State, they moved their deadlines back? So that kind of stuff's another thing you're seeing more and more of.
Okay.
All right, Anika, I'm done with COVID changes. I can't wait to get back to questions from our listeners. And we have some great ones that have come in and from students, a lot of them.
Okay. Wait,
see you next
did you
week?
do your countdown this week? Your Twitter countdown.
Thank you for reminding me.
Mark.
So I have to do it now at the end, the Twitter.
Yeah.
I got so caught up in that 150 thing.
Too many numbers.
Yeah, too many numbers. So I'll do the countdown. We had done number 10 and then number 9.
Who was number 9? I can't remember.
Number 9 was Ellen DeGeneres.
Oh, that's right.
And number 10 was Ariana Grande.
She's the only one I can remember at this point. I don't know why. Not a fan, but okay.
And that's why you blocked it out. So number 8 is, drumroll please. No problem doing it at the end. Doesn't have to be at the start.
Right.
I like when we did our countdowns. Lady Gaga. 82.6 million followers. Lady Gaga.
On Twitter?
On Twitter.
I thought all these people were Snapchatters and Instagram.
They're that too. They're doing that too. They got
platforms.
They got multi-channels.
Good gracious.
Fan or not a fan, Anika? That's what I need to ask you after all of them. Fan or not a fan?
Well, actually, you know what? I probably have heard a Lady Gaga song, but I could not tell you what it is.
Anika, you just really showed your age right there.
I mean, I'm sorry. It is what it is, Lady Gaga.
Say that to Janaea and see what she says.
She'll probably like, me neither.
I don't think so. You'll be surprised. Try it when we get off.
I will report next week.
Okay, yes, I will. Yes, I'm asking you to report. We'll start out our section by saying, what did Janaea say when you said, have you heard of Lady Gaga?
Songs, not Lady Gaga, her song.
Okay.
And we digress.
Get some sleep.
Sorry.
We're already getting close to your bedtime.
Yep.
Okay, friends. This is the last part of Dr. Lisa Ruff's interview on mental health barriers that impact students from functioning at their peak performance. We covered 5 of them last week, and there'll be 2 more today. And then I put Lisa on the hot seat, and we have a big announcement that I'm very excited about. Listen and enjoy.
And now, this week's interview with a special guest.
So we've talked about, 4 or 5 of the big ones I encounter on a regular basis. We talked about anxiety, test anxiety, ADD, ADHD, executive functioning, perfectionism, depression. Any other mental health impediments to learning or excelling in the college process that we haven't discussed that you encounter in your practice?
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the continually unfolding impact of the COVID-19 crisis.
Yeah.
I think that the effect of COVID-19 on our high school students and college students is profound and it's widespread. And I don't know what direction that it's going to take, but I have a feeling there are going to be some long-lasting effects. For one thing, kids who have learning differences are not doing well generally with remote learning, yet it's perhaps not safe for them to go back to school. Kids are more isolated, and so children with depression and anxiety are finding that their symptoms are increasing because they don't have their normal coping systems or access to support. And I think kids who have families that have troubles, that might have financial problems, inadequate housing, abusive family situation, those types of things are all experiencing an increase in disruption as well. To my mind, it's the recipe for a large-scale mental health crisis. And in fact, many pediatricians are already reporting a huge increase in the mental health issues they're seeing among their patients. I can only hope as a society that we decide to put the resources in necessary to help this generation of students going forward.
I'm so glad you said that. I was talking with Joy and I talk with Joy about the podcast a lot because for those of you who go onto yourcollegebounkid.com, Joy's the one who uploads all those episodes. That's her weekly job. So I don't have time for it. So she's like, sometimes, oh, this is interesting. She kind of gets looking at it. And she said to me recently, she said, you really need to do a podcast episode on the mental health impact of COVID-19 on peers. And one weekend she just came home. She's an hour and 45 minutes away from us. She just came home and said, I'm lonely. I'm trying to socially isolate. I'm living in a, well, she's not a house, but it's, and she's got a couple of roommates, but they were like assigned to her by the owners of the home. And it's not like, they're not like friends. Everything's college students at UGA, is a whole bunch of college students. So she really doesn't socialize with them really much. And she's trying to socially isolate and take classes on Zoom and do everything. And she just said, I had to come home.
Yeah.
Just was not feeling well. And I look at my peers, like we're struggling out here. So
absolutely.
I appreciate you mentioning that. I really do.
I was talking to my daughter, who's a freshman at Elon University, about some of the experiences of the kids in her high school peer group. And so many of them are struggling in one way or the other now. And these were incredibly popular, social, successful kids. I feel like if some of these kids can't make it in this situation, maybe it's not possible. And I really worry about these college students. And I know on the Facebook group for Elon parents, many freshman children have come home and are just doing the semester remotely at this point because they were too isolated and they felt too sad.
Well, let's get off that. That's depressing.
Happy talk. Let's have some happy talk.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm excited to say, Lisa and I have been working together, co-counseling in Zoom sessions now for, feels like it's more, 9-10 months. I know we've worked with over 40 students, maybe even 50. And it's been amazing. I've loved working with you, Lisa. It's been fantastic. And I know I probably took all the suspense out of it. But Lisa is actually joining the School Match for You counseling team. I'm super, super excited because for years I went back and forth. Do I want to just be a standalone solo person, or maybe expand? And I just went back and forth. Even when Stephen Antonoff was on our podcast, I talked to him about this. Pros and cons. And I realized after meeting you and working with you, if I have the right person, I love to expand. We can help more people. And I can learn from you, and you have a lot of fantastic areas of strength. So I'm excited to say you'll be joining the School Match for You team. And any of our listeners who reach out to me, there's a good chance you'll get a chance to work with Lisa. And she'll be specializing a lot in students with some of these mental health challenges that we've discussed, as well as, some Midwest schools better than I do. So it's great you have that background as well. But another couple other announcements. Lisa will also occasionally sub for Anika and Dave if they have a conflict. So you can don't be shocked if you turn on, you hear me doing with Lisa in the news or the book chapter or question from a listener. And I've already asked Lisa to do a couple college spotlights. So in some schools that she knows quite well. So I'm really looking forward to having you join the School Match for You team, as well as become the 4th member of the podcast. So congratulations, Lisa.
Oh, thank you, Mark. I am so excited to work with you. I've learned so much already, and I know I'm going to learn more in the future. It's really been the highlight of 2020 for me.
Oh, thank you.
I appreciate so much this opportunity.
Oh, that's such a nice thing to say. Now, here's the one thing we never shared with people. So Lisa's been in either Missouri or Illinois her whole life until coming up in the next few months. She's joining Anika, moving to Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
I'm very excited.
Share that story. Share that story with our listeners.
Sure. I guess my husband and I are what you'd call COVID refugees. Suddenly our jobs became remote. One of the things I probably should have mentioned is that mental health counseling has undergone an incredible transformation since March. We are doing all of our sessions remotely because it's just not safe to sit in a room with someone without a mask and do all the things that we do, which is we talk, we laugh, we cry. I would sing, but my clients don't let me. But I mean, we do all the high risk things. And so we can't meet in person, and doing therapy with a mask just doesn't work because you can't see people's expressions. So I don't think we're ever going back to the office in my field for the most part. So many of my clients love having remote therapy and they prefer it. And I think that insurance companies, I've seen them starting to build virtual health platforms for us to use for free. And I don't think they would do that if they thought this was a temporary situation. In addition, my husband is an actuary and his job became remote. And suddenly we just realized that with my oldest daughter graduating from high school, we didn't have to live in this cold place anymore. And we decided that we wanted to move someplace warmer. And thus we settled on Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
What a great place. I love Chapel Hill. I mean, some of you heard the story. We went back and forth between Charlotte and the Research Triangle and Atlanta when we moved out of Pennsylvania. And to this day, any of those 3 places I would be more than happy with. So excited to have you a couple states over. Sorry, Midwest. You lost another one. That's another one.
But I'm going to be back. We have family here, so I'm always going to be back a lot visiting. I will say that the only person in my family who's not happy that we're moving to North Carolina is my daughter, who went very far away from us to school in North Carolina on purpose and is a little irked with us that we are moving an hour away from her. But I'm hoping once she has that first load of laundry she needs to do, she'll see it differently.
Yeah, just know you're not alone. Kids do not like that. That is not something kids like. I've had that happen many, many times with families I've worked with. Hey, we think we're going to move there. And you just see if eyes could kill, the eye roll is just like piercing right there.
Right.
Let's take a break to learn about Mark's recommended resource for the week.
Okay, friends, the recommended resource for episode 150 is another college admissions podcast, and it's called the College Admissions Brief podcast. And it's actually put on by the admissions staff at Georgia Tech, but they are intentional about not making it all about Georgia Tech. They're making it all about college admissions. And so, it's funny. Rick Clark, the director of admissions at Georgia Tech, he was on episode 50 for an interview, 100 for an interview, and now he's on 150. This was his idea, and it's a great idea. It's a 10-minute podcast. You just want 10 minutes, get a quick, practical podcast. It's targeting high school students, lots of practical tips to have a really healthy perspective, all kinds of things, visiting colleges, having a balanced list, understanding admission decisions. They cover a wide range of things, and they pack a lot into 10 minutes. So you can find it on all the places you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Spreaker, you name it. But it's really good. It's called College Admissions Brief, and it's 10. And it's so smart because their logo is for admission, SSION. They have, instead of IO, they have the number 10 in there. And that's intentional because their commitment is to not go beyond 10 minutes. How you do that, Rick, is beyond me. I have a hard time keeping them at 90, but check out College Admissions Brief. It is our recommended resource for 150. All right, Lisa. Well, you know the drill. You know you're not getting exempt from the hot seat. Every interviewee goes through it, even you, even if you're on the School Match for You YCBK team. So let's start out here. What is the junk food you know you shouldn't eat, but you eat it anyway?
Well, Doritos. I love Doritos so very much.
What kind?
I love all the kinds. My son and I argue about which one is better, the nacho flavor or Cool Ranch. And he says Cool Ranch. And I like that too, but I think I might be have a little special place in my heart for nacho Doritos.
I like them too. That's a good choice. Especially the cheese, those cheesy ones. Yep. What is your favorite kind of music to listen to?
I listen to all kinds of music. I've been listening to some pop music lately. I'll put on Apple iTunes. They'll have like the newest hits just so I can not feel old when people are talking about different artists. But I also like classical music, jazz music. My son loves classical music. He's 9, but he's obsessed with Bach and Beethoven for some reason. So we listen to a lot of that in the car now.
Good for you. Cultured family here.
Not really. It's sort of an aberration.
What is the place you would go in the world for a vacation if you had an all expenses paid trip? Money was no issue.
I would really love to go to Tahiti. I've never been there. And it sounds pretty nice about now. It's only 40 degrees here today.
Oh, that's cold.
And that's not even the worst of it, Mark. It's going to get worse.
Wow. Well, you'll be getting out at a pretty good time.
Exactly.
You only have a couple months left.
That's my plan.
What is your pet peeve, the thing that rankles you, that really irritates you when someone does it?
I really hate it when people sniffle a lot. And they don't blow their nose. And of course, my children do that constantly.
They're probably trying to just get on your nerves.
No doubt.
So this one's probably going to be really hard for you. What are 1 or 2 books you've read that have impacted you?
That is really a great question. And I knew you were going to ask it, so I've been thinking about it. But I still don't have any more prepared answers. So I'm going to say there are 2 books. One is I love anything by Jane Austen, but Pride and Prejudice and Persuasion are my favorites. And I love Jane Austen because she was such a beautiful artist in terms of explaining human nature and people's feelings and their emotions. And I find her work compelling. I usually read her books once a year. The other book that I think really changed my way of thinking is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And I didn't read it in graduate school, but one day I was bored in my office and my office mate had this book on this shelf. And so I just picked it up and started reading it and I could not put it down. And it's all about his experience in concentration camps and what that taught him about human nature and about life and about how you should approach life. And it's a sad but amazing book.
Oh, that's good. Those are good books. And I know you're probably ready for this one too. What's your advice for students and your advice for parents?
My advice for students is go out there and take a chance. Try something you haven't done. Experiment a little bit. Legal things, please, students. Legal things.
Please don't blame our podcast for letting legal things.
But if you want to try to learn to play the trombone, go take a trombone lesson if you can. If you think that you should apply for an internship, you should apply for it. And to take risks within reason, because I think you learn as much from not liking things as you do from liking things. And it's only with experience that you're going to be able to see what direction you need to go, what your preferences are, and what works for you.
My kids said to me the other day that Karis came back here. It was really nice. I had her here for the weekend. She said, Dad, Joey and I think we want to take a martial arts course. Will you pay for it? I'm like, sure. Safety? I'll pay for that. So I think that's kind of cool when people step out of their bounds and do something a little different and try, Now, what about parents? Did you have parent advice in there?
Yes, I do have parent advice. For parents, I would say this. I don't think you can know how your kid's going to turn out till they're at least 30. It's a long game. So stop comparing your kid to other people's kids and just focus on trying to figure out what works for your kid. How can I facilitate this kid's development in the best way that I can? And I think you have to just keep in mind that parenting is full of ups and downs. And your kid is going to make mistakes because they're human. And you sometimes have to let them. And I find watching my kids suffer as a result of their own mistakes to be so painful. I really want to rush in there and fix it for them, but you can't. So you just have to be able to tolerate that anxiety and know that they're going to come out okay on the other side.
Let's close with that because it doesn't get better than that. Parents, stop comparing your kids to other kids. It's natural. It's easy to do. You see their peers or even to your own kids. That can be challenging, comparing one child to your other child.
Right.
But that's fantastic advice. And Lisa, this has been fantastic. Excited about you joining the School Match for You team. Excited about having you occasionally on the podcast. And it's been super fun working with you this last year. And I'm looking forward to working with you for the foreseeable future. But thank you so much for your contributions that you shared. And I think you really hit a lot of chords that I know our families will listen to and will appreciate. So I really appreciate you and thank you for your time.
Oh, well, thank you for having me both on the podcast and for taking me under your wing. I'm so excited about this next journey we're going to go on.
It's just fun, when you're helping kids and you're investing in the future. It's fulfilling work. It's really a calling. It doesn't feel like work. And that's what we want for all of our kids. That find something that's so fun and so fulfilling that you don't even feel like you're working. And I know Lisa and I both feel that about this type of work. So it's going to be fun.
All right. Awesome.
Next week in the news, the new MBA, flexible, cheaper, and lifelong. A great article by Patrick Thomas of the Wall Street Journal. Mark and Anika will discuss what are the pros and cons of using a Roth IRA to pay for college. The question for my listener is going to be an interesting one, especially given Mark and my origins. I heard people get dual citizenship if they attend college in Canada. Can that be true? And a teaser, maybe. And our interview is going to be part 3 with college student Chika Nwosu, who returns to talk about her experience at the University of Miami. And our college spotlight is the University of South Florida.
Yeah, and a couple people may wonder, part 3, what happened to part 1 and 2? Well, if you're a longtime listener, you'll know we had a listener send a question in. Can you do a 3-parter with a student? Do it when they first start the process, do it after they've made all their decisions, and do it after a year in college. And so Chika's back to do the final part. You might want to go to our interviews on yourcollegebounkid.com and just type in the word Chika in the search bar. If you listen to part 1 and part 2 to get the context. But it's one of some of our best feedback has come from part 1 and part 2. So excited to have Chika back. And also, we can't talk about that question the listener sent in without having Dave on there. So I'm going to have to borrow Dave for the question from the listener so he can talk about his Canada there and chime in there. So you'll be getting a lot of Dave next week.
Absolutely. This is not for the weather weenie week here. This is too cold north advice.
But today, our spotlight is the University of Houston. And the University of Houston, it began as Houston Junior College, HJC, back in 1927. Located on 667 acres in the heart of Southeast Houston. That's the main campus. But University of Houston has traditionally been known really more as a regional school, but is really developing an outstanding national reputation as it becomes a lot more selective. And part of that is because of the incredible growth of the state of Texas. And part of it is because they really do have some very, very exceptional programs, and college counselors and students and alumni are spreading the word. You first-time listeners may not know, but in addition to being a private college coach, I'm also director of college counseling for KIPP in Atlanta. And KIPP is the nation's largest charter school network that has over 230 schools. And so my boss at KIPP came from Houston, where she was the director of college counseling there for 10 years. And I've talked with her at length about the University of Houston because she just would send so many kids there. And she said to me over and over, Mark, in my 10 years there, it's incredible how much harder that school got to get into. So this was a school a decade ago were a 3.0 and you waltzed in, and now the median grade point average is a 3.73.
Ooh.
So pretty drastic change. Now let's talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the city, because I think you can't really understand UH, which is just, we often say UH, standing for Houston, without knowing a little bit about Houston itself. A few more things about Houston. It's home to the largest medical center in the world. And surprising stat, almost 5% of all Fortune 500 companies are in Houston. A whopping 24 of the Fortune 500 companies are in Houston.
Wow.
Houston's also home to NASA, and it's a fantastic place for internships. And UH is great because 60% of the alumni live in the Houston area. So the Career Center, and the way they do the Career Center is really nice. A lot of the individual colleges have their own Career Center. So they network closely with the alum to hook the students up with jobs. And they have some very impressive job placement statistics. Houston also has a very large theater and museum district. And one of the nice things about UH students is they get free entrance to the theaters and museums every Thursday. Free museum day for the students. Harris County, where Houston is located, is actually larger than the entire state of Rhode Island. Another nice thing is students get a free pass to use the metro to get all around the city. So if you don't have a car, no biggie, free transportation. Some of the other big draws in Houston are their well-known aquarium, the Houston Zoo, their well-known orchestra, and of course, pretty much every professional sports team is there. Except for hockey, which I guess that's a major sport these days, but certainly baseball, football, and the Rockets. You know a lot of those people, Dave. J.J. Watt and...
Oh, absolutely.
The bearded one.
Oh, yeah.
James Harden.
Yeah. James Harden, that's right.
James Harden. All right. So University of Houston is the third largest university in Texas. It's a tier 1 research school, and only 3% of all colleges in the state are tier 1 research universities, which, these are the largest research universities in the country. They get the most funding. In fact, Houston conducts $150 million annually in research, and they operate more than 40 research centers and institutes on campus. Some of the things they're known for, superconductivity, space, commercialization and exploration, biomedical science and engineering. This is the research that they do. Artificial intelligence, and energy and natural resources. Now, the economic impact of the university in Houston is definitely felt. They are contributing right now more than $3 billion to the Texas economy, and they are generating over 24,000 jobs. So what are some of the top majors at Houston? UH. Definitely their architecture and design program. That is absolutely one where they draw worldwide for that. Another stellar program is entrepreneurship. Very, very strong major within the College of Business. Some other exceptional ones include hospitality and restaurant management. That's also in the College of Business. And it's a very comprehensive major. It covers everything from catering to event planning to culinary. And job placement coming out of their hospitality and restaurant management college is high 90%. It's like 97, 98, 99% job placement. It doesn't get better than that. Guess what the name of the hospitality and restaurant management college is, Dave?
Sam Houston College? wait.
The Hilton School. Hilton. So, Hilton put some big bucks up to get their name on it. The Hilton Hospitality and Restaurant Management School. Biomedical science is very strong, and nursing is one of the exceptional majors at the school. Another really strong program is they have a 3-3 law school program. And the way that works is, you think, well, undergraduate's 4 years. Well, if you get into the 3-3 law program, your 4th year of undergrad is your 1st year of law school. So you end up with a law degree in 6 years instead of 7.
Very nice.
They've also got a great medicine and society feeder program, which has led to a 75% med school acceptance rate, well above the national average, substantially above the national average. A very strong honors college, strong pharmacy program. Social work is very strong. And they're opening up a new medical school this year, right, Dave? They've raised the money. It opens up in the fall.
Oh, really? That's right. That's right.
Yeah. And here's what's really cool. An anonymous donor who's believed to be an alum, he gave so much money to the school that the entire first-year class have their medical school expenses covered for the first year.
Very sweet.
What a great way to recruit. Was a new school. You can come and your first year's free.
That's right. That's very
So
sweet.
this is a growing movement nationally. We may need to do a podcast on it. NYU
That's right.
is doing a lot on this regard in Houston, and some other schools are raising money for it as well. There's some other very strong programs. Definitely have to talk about kinesiology and exercise science is one of them. And absolutely petroleum engineering. And I've mentioned this before, but it bears repeating. It's extremely competitive out there for students. So schools are smart. They have smart people. And one of the things you do when you work at admissions is you say, what is my competitive advantage? And so what you'll find is certain areas are known for something. And when an area is known for something, I'm talking about geographically, colleges realize, oh, we have a competitive advantage. We're already known for this thing. So we have to have extremely strong programs. I'll give you an example. The DC area is known for international relations. So pretty much every college within 90 minutes of DC has very strong, international relations. Whether it's, it's not just American and GW and Georgetown. It's George Mason. It's James Madison. It's Delaware. It's Loyola. It's Johns Hopkins. They all have strong IR. Same for when you're talking about film. The LA area is known for film and screenwriting, playwriting, right? And we've done college spotlights before. And LMU, Loyola Marymount, extremely strong program. Chapman, another exceptionally strong program. USC, UCLA, that you're going to take advantage of that. Any school that is on the ocean, you name it, whether it's College of Charleston or Eckerd, or, you could go on and on and on. They all have strong marine biology. They're on the ocean. And if you're in Texas and you're a tier 1 college and Texas is known for oil, then you're going to be strong in petroleum engineering. That's so right. 4 of the top petroleum engineering schools in the country, Dave, UT Austin, Texas A&M, UH, University of Houston, and Oklahoma. So just a little tip there.
Makes sense.
Now, if you're undecided, then they have a great exploratory program, exploratory studies it's called. You get an entire year with a lot of extra advising before you have to pick and decide what you want to major in. The university is divided up into 16 different colleges. So there's these 16 colleges with all different focuses on different things. Now, when it comes to diversity, it's one of the most diverse schools that you'll get, especially racially, and I'll share the stats later. But it's known as both an Hispanic serving organization and an Asian serving institution because of how large those numbers are. And I'll share them when I get to the stats section. If you like sports, they've got sports at pretty much every level. You can do varsity, club, and intramural for almost every sport. They are a D1 school, of course. They participate in the American Athletic Association. Do you remember their nickname, Dave? You remember Phi Slamma Jamma with Akeem Olajuwon, Clyde Drexler? And
yeah, I sure do.
That was Houston.
Yeah,
Quiz
right.
taking you back to 1984. Was that 83?
That's right.
83 or 84, one of them. A while ago.
And wait, weren't they beaten by Villanova that year?
Yeah, it was NC State.
NC State.
No, it was right. 1983. Yes, Jim Valvano was 1983.
That's right.
Remember Lorenzo Charles grabbed that missed shot and dunked it? Yep, and took down the mighty Akeem Olajuwon, Clyde Drexler, Larry Michaud, and all that crowd. So
that's right.
You remember testing the memory banks? Remember the nickname? Yes, no?
I was Houston. No, I can't.
That is a no. It is the Houston Cougars.
That's
the Cougars.
Right.
The Cougars.
I was about to say the Astros. I was like, no, that's baseball.
I see how much baseball you watch, man.
That's right.
When it comes to applying to UH, you can apply through the Common application or through Apply Texas, which is the Texas app. Either one is fine. Now, one thing that's little known about the school is the University of Houston is actually a flagship institution within the University of Houston system. So UHS is the University of Houston system. And what this is, it's a multi-campus university that has various branch locations. So there's a University of Houston in Sugar Land. There's a University of Houston in Clear Lake. And there's a University of Houston in Victoria. And, of course, the main school, which is just known as Downtown Campus, University of Houston Downtown. And the reason why I say that they are multi-campus university is because each of these different schools have their own admission process. So these different campuses do have a different admission standards. Admission decisions are based just on transcript and test score reviews. So this is no essays, no recs, no activities. Like a large school, they use rolling admissions to determine how students get in. Now, they do have something really unique. If you do not like the decision, you can appeal. And if you go to appeal, then they put you through a holistic review. And so they do actually do a holistic review. And so they overturn a bunch of decisions every year off of appeal. So, Dave, I'm probably 2/3 part so far going through this. Let me stop and see what's popping and jumping off the page for you.
Well, like the 3-3 law school, that's very nice. You know, anytime that you can truncate a learning experience from 7 years to 6 or 4 to 3, that's an additional savings of anywhere from $30,000 to $70,000, depending on your cost of admission. So that's really cool. It's not surprising that it leads in energy, petroleum engineering. I actually did know that. Texas is pretty much the center of the oil industry. Oklahoma may beg to differ, but we know it's Texas. And of course, you bring back some great memories with Phi Slamma Jamma. We watched that championship run, and we actually saw that win by NC State. So yes, and I'm very impressed that you had said that it's actually upgraded its admissions. That you're going to talk more about that, I'm sure. That from being a school that you can walk into being one that's actually quite competitive. So that tells you with the growth of Houston and the emphasis on urban campuses, how both have benefited over the years.
Yeah, and they really do have some exceptional programs. I mean, I don't know how much I emphasized it, but when you look at some of their programs, like their architecture or in their entrepreneurship and all the other programs I mentioned, I mean, they can compete nationally. And that's led them to be a school that is really drawing from a lot of different places. Like, I mean, they currently have students from 130 countries. So that's a lot of countries, that they're drawing from. So a few more things. 43% of students are first gen. So they've really developed a niche and a specialty at working with that first generation student whose parents have not graduated from college. There are 45 different languages spoken on campus. So it's pretty cosmopolitan when it comes to that. They're also a very DACA friendly school, which is true for, quite a few of the schools in Texas. Been a great place for DACA students to go. A few more things. So, Texas has this unique program, and we've talked about it a little bit. I'm going to have someone come on and really, do an interview on it to do a deeper dive in terms of how they work. But the UT Austin used to be top 10%. Remember that, Dave? Top 10% were automatically admitted, then became top 7%, top 6%. For UT Austin. So the way UH works is if you're top 10% in Texas, you're automatically admitted without test scores. You don't need them. Yep. If you're in the top quarter of the class, anywhere from 11 to 25%, and you have a 1080 on the SAT, then you're automatically admitted. If you're anywhere from the top quarter to the top half of your class, and you have an 1170, then you're automatically admitted. Now, here's the caveat. There are more difficult colleges that does not apply. They still do automatic admission, but in some cases, the test scores can be over 100 points more in terms of instead of leaving 1170, you might need a 1270 for certain, So some of the programs that require significantly higher profiles are their business school, of course, their architecture school. And their architecture school also requires a portfolio. Their College of Natural Science and Math and the College of Engineering. All those schools require higher scores. But remember, they have 16 colleges. And the nice thing is they do publish all of these things on their website, so you're not left for guessing. You can know for each individual college what you would need to get in order to get admission. So you got to give them a lot of credit for transparency in the admission process. It's pretty clear, what the standard is. And of course, if you're applying to dance, music, and theater major, then an audition is required there as well. Another really nice program they have is called Cougar Promise. Now, this is for Texas residents. If they're admitted by January 15th and they file their FAFSA by January 15th, and if they make under $50,000, then all tuition and all fees are covered, except for room and board. But you can know tuition and fees are covered. So it's one way they're trying to reduce significant parent debt for under-resourced families. They also have some very, very generous merit aid. They have an academic excellence scholarship and several others that can cover pretty much close to the cost of attendance for real high achievers. And it's already, UH has already been listed by all your major publications out there as one of the best values in education. So whether you're looking at Princeton Review or Forbes or U.S. News, I mean, they all produce these best value colleges, and UH always shows up on like best value for your money colleges. All right, you ready for stats, Dave?
Go for it, my friend.
Over 38,000 undergrads and 7,500 grad students.
Big school.
Pretty much exactly 50-50 when it comes to men and women. 65% acceptance rate, so 2 out of 3. Cost of attendance, 26,000 in-state, 42,000 out-of-state. And that's before need-based aid or merit money. That would be if you paid full sticker price without any need-based or merit-based money. 17% of students live on campus, and students are not required to live on campus. Not a big frat or sorority school. 4% in frats, 3% in sororities. UH claims that they are the second most diverse college in the nation. And you know what? They may not be embellishing it from a racial standpoint. So here are their racial numbers, Dave.
Okay.
37.5% Latinx, Hispanic Latinx.
Wow.
23.5% Asian.
Wow.
22.6% white, 10.4% black, 3.4% multiracial, 2.4% unknown. Wow. It's about as diverse as you're going to get. Reminds me of Georgia State right here in Atlanta. As far as test scores go, for the SAT, and I'm going to give I'll give the evidence-based reading and writing scores, which are fairly similar to the math. 13% in the 700s, 44% between 6 and 700, 38% in the 500s, and 3% under 500. So an average math SAT of 615. And then evidence-based reading and writing average is 609. I don't like to say average because people think they're cutoffs. I like to give ranges so people know that there are different people at different levels. So the majority of students are 6 and 700s, but there's a good almost 40% that are in the 500s. And for ACT, for you ACT people, 13%, 30 to a 36, 47%, 24 to a 29, and 37%, 18 to a 23, with the 25 being the average ACT. So there you got UH, Dave, another city school, diverse city school with D1 and with some exceptionally strong programs. And, so many people I work with, they want to be in the city, but immediately they think East Coast.
Well, it's a great city. It's up and coming.
Opportunities, yeah.
Absolutely. New medical school, great architecture, great engineering, and some great D1 sports. So
I really like their entrepreneurship program because, entrepreneurship is close to my heart. Like, why work for someone else if you can work for yourself? If you're inclined. I realize it's not for everybody. But as an entrepreneur, it's great being able to work when you want, where you want, with whom you want. Yeah. So I love it.
Sounds good. Awesome, man. Awesome. Go Cougars.
When do you go back to the Virgin Islands?
I go back to the Virgin Islands on the 16th. I'll be there through the New Year's. My wonderful wife and daughter were supposed to travel with me, but my wife has informed me that she is not leaving the house, and I cannot blame her with the current situation. So for the first time in many, many years, I may be spending Christmas away from my family. So that's a bit of a bummer, but I'll be back for shortly thereafter. And once this whole thing dies down, I look forward to bringing them all back, maybe even in time for the March break. So, Lord willing, we'll have to see.
Guess what, Dave?
Yeah.
Our listeners are not feeling any more sympathy for you. When you were in COVID territory, you got sympathy. But now you're a doctor, you're making good money, and you're on the Virgin Islands. You'll survive without your family for one day. I don't think any tears are being shed, and no cookies are getting sent your way either. Ever since you got the Virgin Island gig, the cookies and the DoorDash gift cards from Wisconsin, they all dried up.
They are. I'm going to have to settle for curried goat and oxtail soup.
All right. See you next week, my friend.
No problem, friend.
And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. Your College Bound Kid is produced by Dave Vasaya of podcastengineers.com. If you find this podcast helpful, it would help us tremendously if you would subscribe and write us a review on your favorite podcast listening station. And please be sure to click the share button and send this to someone you know that can really use this information. The amazing music that you hear is by Victor Allen Weeks. Our image editor is Tauha Khan. Webmaster is Stalianos Dimitru. And marketing designs are by Kimberly Blass. And if you want to get a copy of the book, 171 Answers to the Most Asked College Admissions Questions, you can go right to 171answers.com. And if you want to have a college coaching session with Mark, you can send him a text to area code 404-664-4340. And if you have a question or a few questions that you would like to ask us, and we'll include them on the show, you can just email us at questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. Every week, we'll take one question and include it in the episode. We don't like your questions. We love your questions. So send them our way. And by the way, check out our website, yourcollegeboundkid.com. Again, we thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to meeting with you again next week.